Welcome to the Dune Prophecy Podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to the secrets of the sisterhood. I'm David.
And I'm Elysia, and this is our coverage of the penultimate episode of the HBO series Dune Prophecy, Episode 5, In Blood, Truth.
We're going to kick off this episode with some admin, and then we'll get into our hot takes and analysis, and then we'll get into a scene-by-scene breakdown, followed by feedback, and then at the very, very end, we'll do a little bit of deep dive book spoilery stuff.
So if you want to also be involved in the feedback, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts on the show and this universe. So please send those thoughts to dune@thelorehounds.com. And thank you, as always, to Nancy, our hand of the pod, for helping us sort through those emails and helping us put together the feedback document.
Absolutely. And the show guide. If you've not been around for some of our deeper dive shows, sometimes we put together a on-screen show guide to help keep oriented to characters and plot. And Nancy has been writing an amazing episode by episode recaps, and those are on the show guide, along with on-screen characters, some timeline stuff. You can find all of that resource on our Notion page. There's a link show note below. And again, if you're also interested in joining the conversation, we've got a really active community Discord. It's a lot of fun. We've got a great mod team, so we'd invite you to join there. And there is a lot of discussion going on about this show.
And if you want to support the community and make sure that we can keep doing these podcasts, then you can join our Supercast and Patreon. You can find those links in the show notes. We'll have a little more information at the end. But basically, you get there also extras like extra movie reviews and usually second breakfast episodes. This month, you get some extra Netflix Christmas.
It has been an extra cheesy Christmas. Did you guys get the extra Vanessa? Which ones were you doing again?
The Hudgens one we still have to do.
The Hudgens verse.
Yeah, we're going to do it 1 a.m. my time.
Okay. How are you doing? I know we're both a little bit under the vacation time pressure. We're both heading off for the holidays very soon, so it feels like the walls are closing in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you know that I've been melting down for the past couple months, and now I need to somehow fix everything within the next 2 days. So I'm fine. I'm just fine.
Great. And I love it when there's like these big deep IP shows right in the going right into the holidays. Gee, thanks.
Right.
Thanks,
Yeah. Stop
streamers.
with the December releases.
Oh, my Lord. I started catching up with Black Doves, and I'm about 4 episodes in. And yeah, I can't believe that they jammed it in at the end. It's pretty good. So on that note, I think this is going to be a little bit faster of an episode, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But I think with the scene by scene recaps, my notes they're going to be really short this time, and we're just going to touch on it. And I think we're probably going to focus a little bit more on the lore and the basics of the plot mechanics, and less about our feelings about things. I don't know how you're feeling about things, but this might be the episode that zagged, and we got a lot of feedback saying people are struggling a little bit by this episode. So we can get into that in a minute. We also had some conversation about the extended universe book comparison. We also got a lot of feedback saying that people kind of enjoy having you, Elysia, give us some insights into some of what the other book plots are. So I guess we'll keep kind of trying to walk that fine line. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I mean, I will bring up lore as as I think it's helpful, but I've also just given up on, and we'll talk about one thing in particular this episode where I'm like, no, okay, they just don't care about the lore. But it is funny though. There's some rumblings about maybe that they are exploring a season 2.
I saw that in our Discord. Yeah, you had a comment, and somebody else posted a link, I think.
Yeah, was it for Elysia or something? But anyway, it's in the article. I had to laugh that they were saying, and we have the books in the room. It's going to be based on the books. So like, why did they feel the need to say that? But I do also have to say that they were saying the exact same thing about the Acolyte. So people don't hold your breath.
Right. Well, and yeah. HBO versus Disney, but we can't trust it.
Well, no, right? HBO has been awful since Zaslav took over. They've been worse.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I'm not happy with Iger either now for other reasons, but yeah.
So we'll have some OG original book deep dive talk at the very end because we have to talk a little bit about the Blue Eyes. Mm-hmm. And we last recording, you and I talked about our episode 6 and season wrap up plans, but I kind of forgot what we decided that we're going to do. We're going to do a shorter episode and then a follow up with a season.
Right. I guess, yeah, we were going to do like some more hot takes, free-form discussion that we could record the week of Christmas, and then the following week do our final mailbag with more wrap-up.
Okay, that's right. So the 24th, you and I were going to record like kind of a hot take because it's right on the front side of Christmas, and both of us are going to be traveling outside of our home studios and with our families, and so we've got to structure our schedules for that. So we were going to do a morning recording, get that out, a little bit more of a quick touch on key points of the final episode, and then later in the week, going to record, right? You said more of a wrap up podcast, and then
the next week when I get back. Yeah,
that's right. That's what it is. And then so the week after we'll do that, and then we were going to do a wrap up with the Dune Minute podcast guys after that. Once we were all back and set that scheduled out. So that's the plan. Look for a short hot take, and then about a week later, a bit more of a wrap up the listener feedback. So. Lastly, I just want to reemphasize show guide. There's a link in the show notes. It's an amazing resource, and Nancy has just been doing a great job on the episode recaps. It's a really, if you need to go reference and dig in through it, she also does a little theory crafting and points out there. So it's pretty good. Right, all that admin out of the way. Where are you with episode 5 of 6 episodes?
Okay. So first of all, like I find they are making it unnecessarily confusing. Like even if you know the lore, for example, this episode, the previous episode ended with we saw Theodosia doing the face dancing thing. She's transforming, and they didn't even mention it this episode. What are we doing? So at this point, I feel like I cannot make a real assessment until I see where they end the season. And maybe they put out like that rumor about a season 2 just to calm people, because how could they possibly wrap all this up in one more episode after everything they've teased without explaining?
It's kind of a crazy train of packing all of this lore in and just railroading it at us. And then create such a mystery box thing where there's this and then there's that and the other thing and plots within plots, and then you're just going to wrap it all. It's just like the episode 6 is just going to be ticking boxes. Like we're just going to be running through the plot, ticking boxes to close down these different story loops.
So I have to be completely honest about something. Part of me is like rejecting in my head at this point this being canon to the Villeneuve universe. I just can't align it with that. And I kind of, part of me hopes, I don't know what I hope for, because I found it so obnoxious when people say that about other shows. Like, I hope it's not canon. Like, well, guess what? It is. But in this case, it's like, it makes so little sense in some places that I hope they come up with it, or at least they close the gaps. But I don't even know, even if they have a season 2 where they, draw more from the actual material out there, are they going to reintroduce key characters that they seem to have cut out, like Anna Carino? I don't know how they could even fix this in a season 2.
Yeah. I don't know. And it feels to me, and I mentioned this last episode, it's like they read the books. Yeah, the books are in the room.
Did they? I mean, some people who wrote an early draft read the books. I do not think the showrunner read the books.
Interesting. Because they're just chucking in lines. They're like, oh, that was a cool line, or that was a cool little thing, and they're chucking it in. So but they don't understand what they're saying necessarily. There was a line of God created Arrakis to train the faithful. Mm-hmm. And Michaela just pops that out in the bar scene with Desmond. Uh-huh. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense that's not, it's a lore line, but why? Why?
Can I bring up like what doesn't make sense to me? So I've brought up several times that I really hoped that they had an explanation for why Dorothea would be in Lila's memories and remember her own death and stuff. Mm-hmm. And now we have what's her name? Raquella in her memories, who seems to remember her own death too. I'm like, they just don't know how this is supposed to work. And I guess it's just different for the show. But if you are making a completely different version of the lore, then please take the time to explain it to us.
Right. Oh, I got a little sand trout here coming to say hi to me. Anyway, let's I guess just go ahead and get to the scene by scene. And again, we're going to do kind of a compressed version of that. That said, and our plot and writing criticisms aside, I do have to say that and we've said this before, the costumers and visually the costumes, the set deck, the palace is gorgeous. I love the design. I'd love some feedback from anybody who has some sort of art history or architectural history, because the design that they're using for the palace with these sort of lathed columns, these sort of rounded columns, they look really interestingly inspired by something in the world, but I don't know where. It's just really great. And there's just some beautiful, beautiful shots. So, all right. Anything else, or should we go ahead and dive in?
I love the cast still too.
Okay. Yeah. They did a good job on the casting. That is for sure. All right. We start with the first scene with some ships in orbit, and Francesca, who will be Francesca, a mysterious woman arrives who turns Francesca. I have to say the ship design, the overhead shot of the starport looked really great.
I love all the ship designs. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see these fighters that are in orbit with the fleet. And then later there's another scene of them coming down and doing a flyover of the palace. That I'm pretty sure is the same ship design that is Duncan Idaho's ship in Dune 1 movie, where there's that scene where Paul talks to him in the hangar bay, and it's this weird, long, thin wing-like ship. And I'm pretty sure that's one for one is the same design. So
I liked the ships. They looked like razors in the sky, like actual, like razors you use in real life.
Right.
But also kind of look like the knives that we see being called sister knives later in the series.
Yeah. It's a good point. I think they're called switchblade. Doesn't Richese call them switchblades or something like that?
I mean, switchblade just means how it opens, right?
Yeah. So showing the fleet in orbit too just gives us a nice visual reminder, or not reminder, but foreshadowing for what the storyline unfolds for Constantine later. Like, oh yeah, the ship's in orbit. So, and that goes into my general comment about this. These writers are smart from a design standpoint. They really are writing. It feels like they're writing for streaming.
Well, that's not the writers though. That's production design.
Well, no, not production design, but like how whoever's breaking the episode and lining up the shot, they understand how to foreshadow and they understand how to tease a streaming audience. So, and then of course we see Francesca, and we saw her in the trailers and she was on our episode guide, but gosh, it's kind of late, episode 5, to be bringing in this major character.
Yeah. When she showed up, I was like, oh, I totally forgot about her, that she was supposed to show up.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I wonder how many people even realize that this is the older version of one of Valya's conspirators from when they were younger.
Right. Yep. And when we see them as young girls,
that, really.
Yeah. When we see them as young girls, and they're when Valya is sort of given her mandate from Raquella, see her little cabal, and Francesca is one of them. And we'll talk a little bit more.
Kasha and Tula, basically.
Exactly. And we can talk about Francesca a little bit more breakdown. So the next scene we have is Desmond getting dressed. My man finally gets a new uniform.
Yeah.
Or did you have something else?
But you were going to mention that Tabu is a famous Bollywood actress.
Oh, so right. Yeah. So the actress,
she did this.
Right. I don't know her. I'm not familiar with her, but if you do any internet searching for her, like, man, your feed, the search results are all over the place. Apparently she's quite the name.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're familiar with her at all.
I mean, yeah, I don't watch that much Bollywood stuff. I do watch some of it. And yeah, she's one of those faces that immediately like,
Right. So yeah, good job on the casting. All right, so my man gets a new uniform. Of course, then he gets it dirtied later on very quickly.
I cheered out loud when he threw down that dirty duster. I cheered for you, David.
Thank you. And so Red Zippy on the Discord, on our live watch, we have a live watch channel, and she made a joke about, he's got a new uniform, but maybe he should, take a shower and brush his hair. Fair enough. A couple things of note that we see in the shot, and this whole little scene is beautifully shot. The way they reflections and the way that they sort of build everything up. But we see scars on his back. We see his knife. There was even a little bit of a conversation: is this a Chris knife or not? And I'm pretty sure it's a metal knife.
Yeah,
are of the same.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, like, I wouldn't surprise me if they called it a Chris knife, but it's not.
And it looks like it might be a whale tooth.
But then it would be just a Chris knife, because that would make so much more sense, because he came from Maracas.
Yeah, right. But then
a Chris knife is, by the way, is a knife of Shahalud, the worm, the tooth. Sorry,
right, the tooth. Yeah, lots of lore, lots of big stuff about that. But it looks like the handle might be whalebone or like a whale. And then
maybe she left him with it. What we find out at the end, Tula is his mom, probably.
Right. That's what I'm wondering. If the whale, that's the connection, right? That's another Seiki thing. And then, of course, we have this little piece of black cloth that they're definitely signaling. They signaled us in episode 1. We really haven't seen it. And now we see like 2 or 3 times in this episode.
Right.
So, and then there's this beautiful shot of,
and you point out later in the notes that it matches what Harrow Harkonnen is wearing, the type of cloth. So yeah, seems to be a Harkonnen cloth. But anyway,
yeah, it really visually feels like it's the same kind of material, the same sort of bump. So now who knows what they're doing, but that's kind of what. And because they give us a shot of Harrow later, a very close up of the material of his outfit. So that's kind of where my mind is trending.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then they do the last shot in this scene is just gorgeous. It's the reflection on the table of his face, and it's his eye. So we see his face inverted because we're looking down at this reflecting surface of the table. And then as the camera moves, it looks like, and we just see his one eye, his one crazy space wizard eye, rising up the placement on the screen, and it almost is as if a moon is rising, and it's just, and then we linger on it for a moment. Just absolutely gorgeous. So really, really nice story. So our next scene is the new regiment. So we get a scene of Desmond walking in with his new elite regiment, and Haviko gives a little speech about needing to have some tough guys to kick some ass in the verse. Are you along the lines of this is proto-Sardaukar, or
how could it be anything else?
Yeah. They're not. I think they're making it a very thin connection in terms of like, hey, this isn't but it's like it's enough of a story element that I think it connects.
I mean, Emperor's troops, we know of no other.
Yeah. And, they're referred to, I believe, in the Dune movies. I don't know if they're referred to this way in the books, but it's certainly in the Villeneuve movies, they call themselves the Emperor's Blade. And so we see sword, we see them kneeling. And so, yeah, it all very connected. A little bit of lore with the Sardaukar. First off, Bashar is a military rank. and it's roughly equivalent to a colonel. So not a general, but very, very high ranked officer.
I guess the emperor is the general.
Yeah, and there's two other ranks that we are given in the OG books. We have Burseg and we have Supreme Bashar. And so there's probably a lot more, but it's good enough for what we're working with. And I guess some of the roots of the word are related to bringer of glad tidings. That the word, and we know that Frank Herbert very much armchair linguist. He loved to dig around and root around in languages of other cultures and other histories and try to think about and formulate things that both sound good to our ear, but also make some sort of historical linguistic sense. But then with the Sardaukar, if you try to do some etymology work on that, it seems pretty complex. And Sardaukar feels like more of a word that is engineered as opposed to just grafted straight out. And different people have broken down the word, looking at SAR, SAR, DAU, and KAR, and how to train car, all of those things. But I think it's too complex and too opaque to be able to explain anything definitive on the podcast. But we know that later on in the books and stuff, these are the Emperor's terror troops. And he needs that leverage against right. I mean, even though he should have a big army, I don't understand how he's in position without already having some sort of force like this. So anyway, and then we see those fighters do a flyover, right?
Yeah.
So again,
well, it's also, where did the fighters come from? They must have already been there, because they don't just suddenly I have an army since yesterday.
Yeah. They do a lot of jetpacking and a lot of time jumpy stuff in this,
but so he said it was he cites the time. It hasn't been a time jump or something.
It's very quick, yeah. So I don't know, how did he? Yeah, there's a lot of.
They're thinking about that.
Yeah. All right. So then the next scene, we kind of transition into a little bit of a party afterwards, and Francesca arrives. She reveals her veil, and Natalia is a bit upset about this. And we see Mark Strong looking like a puppy dog. So, and later we learn that he's imprinted, but we'll talk about that. Get to that. I was pretty surprised that she called him by his first name in public, not Your Grace or Emperor or whatever.
I guess that was a power move for sure. But the way I thought Mark Strong did a really great job with portraying the way his face lit up in a way we haven't seen him at all, looking at his wife the moment she walked up.
Very good point.
Ouch.
Yeah. She is not. Natalia did not look happy at all. Francesca. And then, did you notice that Francesca's design on her dress is the same as Valya's?
Oh, no.
There's the little sort of patterning, the little sort of embellishments that they have. And nobody else has that but the Mother Superior. And I figured that was kind of like a little, rank symbol. You see that, that's the Mother Superior, even if it has her veil down or whatever. And she's not wearing a Truthsayer hat either, right? So she's, I don't know what they're signaling to us that. The next scene we have is Inez and Constantine. Of course, Inez kind of storms out from the ceremony of the new troopers. She's a bit upset about that. We see that she gets encountered by some guards, and then Constantine, as our guard, tries to go in. And we see her doing some Prana Bindu style training to center herself, clear her mind, and we have this intimate between brother and sister. Did you pick up anything on this scene other than just this intimate moment between them?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I feel like Inez has I guess I'm starting to at least understand Constantine a bit better in this episode, in that, I guess I thought for some reason they were going to go with a trope where, the illegitimate son ends up being the better fit. And then I'm like, but he's actually legitimately terrible. Like, I mean, not like an awful person, but just immature and, not fit to rule. And instead they're going, the opposite way, where it's, yes, he is immature and not fit to rule, but he's going to be shoehorned into it because mommy has daddy on a short leash.
And we got daddy issues all over the place here with both these characters. And they're laying a ton of groundwork and track work for developing their intimacy later, because obviously this is going to foreshadow that later conversation with Francesca about Constantine's quote unquote purpose. But this is all season 2 stuff, right? There's no way that we can resolve these tensions between brother and sister in the next episode. So it's really confusing because this is some deep character work that'd be great to explore, but we're just packing it in here in episode 5. So one thing that I saw that I thought was interesting was when she dismisses the guard, there's a very, her hand is down by her side and she does this very subtle thing where she sort of does this dismissive gesture. And it just I think it's a nod to secret battle language that Atreides use in the OG books. And, the sisters have been using in the show. So the idea that people are using non-vocal communications throughout the Imperium to, I don't know. It seemed like they're throwing that. So, all right, Sister Jen is recruited. We get the sisters in one of their lessons. They're heating up their hands over some Bunsen burners. And we get the line that heat is just energy and it can be displaced. And then basically Jen gets recruited by Tula. She complains. Jen's feels like they're kind of overriding her a little bit. She's like pushing stuff pretty hard, but she blurts out about the whose eyes are watching us from the darkness. I'm like, yes.
I found her delivery of stuff, and I don't blame the actress, but I found her delivery of stuff so like suddenly like standing up and saying exposition now, sitting down. Like, okay.
Right. But yeah, what is this dream, and how is she resistant to the dream? I think that again, more stuff. I'm not sure how they're going to wrap up. But yeah, she does ask the question that we all really want to know, which is, whose eyes are watching us from darkness. We'll talk a little bit about that when we go down south to the the southern desert to talk with the faithful. We'll get into it at the very end of the podcast. But at least we have confirmation that Jen's not faking her not being affected by the dream. So we were kind of speculating that before.
Well, I never thought she was faking it, but but I do think it's interesting that they put Jen in a position where she might have to make a hard choice in terms of giving her the sedative. Like she looked really uneasy, thinking she might have to jab Lila with the sedative. And I kind of wish she had her hand forced in that way, to help her understand the difficult decisions the sisterhood makes a bit better.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that she's resisting is she keeps bringing up about these questions about, are we being used, and is Lila being used? It's like, well, yeah, you are. you have pledged yourself to the service of the sisterhood, and the sisters serve, choose to serve the Imperium, so quote or the human race. So yeah, you are. But then before that, we get a scene where Jen gets introduced to Lila. And Jen is brought in. This reminded me from what I read up. I didn't finish Sisterhood of Dune, but there's a whole scene where Valia gets brought into the secret, and it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. I don't know if you saw any connections. Or they're sort of displacing some plot lines onto other characters.
Yeah, just sort of it's a callback, I suppose. Yeah.
So we get a little bit of a jump scare. I don't know. Felt a little cheap to me when she slid the little panel aside.
I didn't understand why even do that if you're just about to walk in the room anyway.
Yeah, it was very strange. Anyway, we get to see Lila having a moment, and we get some setup for the fact that she's sort of coming in and out of being affected by other memories. And again, and then later, Sister Avila mentions the word abomination, even they don't use the word in a capital A proper noun. But
what abomination is this? I was like, okay, there we go. They said the thing.
This is the thing. Yeah, they read, but do they understand? Anyway, the whole lore on abomination, it really, I read the Dune Encyclopedia entry for it, and the deep front side of the definition and what abomination is was all about a prohibition about exposing the unborn to the spice, to the water of life, and that the unborn doesn't have the abilities and the training that you need. There's a whole process that Reverend mothers need to go through. Part of their training is to create a layer of control between themselves and their other memories. And you have to do that before you awaken the other memory.
So that's what we see happening in Dune 2 with Paul's sister, Aaliyah. But about the Dune Encyclopedia, I just want to make sure that listeners know that is not canon, and it was never canon. It was something that was written, and Frank Herbert was like, "Oh, this is cool," and Frank Herbert wrote a foreword to it. But he said basically what he's going to say is that this is a book written in universe, so it's not meant to be completely accurate. It's just what this fictional in-universe writer thought, because it was also written before Frank Herbert finished his books. So then he goes on and contradicts it in his own books. And then, people are like,
and there's a bunch of stuff that's not in the encyclopedia that is in the later Frank Herbert books and stuff. So but anyway, we can pull some bit pieces. So, but basically abomination is a preborn who's been exposed and or somebody who is not able to control their other memories and it's taken over by them. And then throughout the episode, Jen calls Lila Doe Eyes, which I didn't.
It sounds like a nickname. I assumed she must have called her that in one of the early episodes, and I don't really remember that, but it's just like a nickname, a term of endearment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, then we go to a conversation with Constantine and Francesca. Beautiful between mother and son, and there's a couple of just gorgeous setup shots in here of Tabu being framed in this long hallway, or two of them standing in front of this painting. I think this is a painting of the coronation or the wedding of Haviko and Natalia. It seems like the dress that she's wearing, that, and the thing that I took most from this scene was the fact that Francesca's looking at this painting and kind of thinking, what if that was me instead of Natalia in the painting? How am I? But again, so much to try to convey in episode 5 of 6 episodes. We also learn that when Constantine comes up, he says, well, I didn't send a crystal for you, which must be those little message things.
Well, yeah. So we'll talk about what Harrow Harkonnen gets later, but I was, I went down a deep dive of message, send a crystal. And the only thing I can think of is, from much later to, 10,000 years later in the timeline, they have something called Ixian Dictato, which uses, and it's something that a character who doesn't really have arms because he's wormy, uses to dictate basically. And they use, they print on something called Iridulian crystal paper. And it's basically, it's a crystal that they can slice so thin that it creates paper like a micro whatever, microscopic paper. Yeah, basically like 1 micron thick or something like that. That's from much later. So I don't know. That's the only reference I could see that made that make sense. But then the fact they said crystal and then they showed something that actually looks more like a gel sphere later. I don't know. Yeah. They just, they need to explain this stuff. I really hope the finale does.
Again, just throwing out terms without really understanding them. But I think one thing that as you're talking about crystals, one thing that made me think that something that interesting that is very present in the original books, but I didn't really ever appreciate, was the fact that Frank Herbert was thinking through how do you keep records for, hundreds of, with tens of thousands of years? And so he actually thought about the medium, like, is paper going to exist? Is it going to survive? Is a piece of paper going to survive 10,000 years? And it's like, you can write on Shiga wire, you can write on all these different surfaces or these different writing implements. And he kind of thought about it and what is durable and what is going to be accessible in 10, 20, 50, 60,000 years from now. So very, very cool aspect of the original 6 books. If you get to those particular ones, he thinks very carefully about certain things. Appreciate that detail. All right, next we get Harrow and Desmond. Harrow comes to see Desmond in his office. He calls him Lord Bashar, which is a little bit of a weird, like a double, like Doctor kind of thing. But I kind of read that as just Harrow being uncomfortable in the situation.
Obsequious, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't get what all the stuff that was on Desmond's desk. It was like they just dumped out a box of curios. And I don't understand what purpose. I mean, it certainly hides this little crystal thing that he gave him later. But I did appreciate the fact that Harrow is telling the truth, right? He's actually saying, my sister Tula and my uncle Yevgeny actually saw right through her, which I appreciate, because one of the themes of the whole season has been truth and lies and using these things. And so the best lie is, that the core of it is something that's true, right? So that there's a authenticity to it when you're speaking about it.
Yeah. I immediately, as soon as he started saying stuff about Valia, I'm like, oh, Valia sent him. Clearly and then we get confirmation later in the episode. But then that makes me question, like, did Desmond also clock that? But then I think not, because also Desmond needed Harrow's help figuring out that the rebels were using the club to smuggle things through. And you could see the moment that Desmond was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe this guy isn't useless. So I don't think Desmond's very smart.
I 100% agree with that take. I had the same similar note, which was there's a point where you see Desmond go, oh, yeah, I guess that would be smart. You're like, okay, you're dumb. You're kind of dumb. You may be a good fighter. You may be a good soldier, but not, this is not CSI Mia here, right? You're not lead detective. So, we get some more space cocaine, which we...
Is the space cocaine supposed to be Samuta?
No, because Samuta you drink, no, Samuta is the musical one, right? Yeah, it's what's the drinking one that the Mentats use? Sappho, the juice of Sappho.
Sappho juice. Yeah, they all come from the same planet, Ekaz.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't. Is this spice? Is this like something else plus a little bit of spice? Like, this is, we've mixed in a little bit to bump. But obviously, we got the foreshadowing earlier when with Constantine, the Richese daughter, to signal that this drug will sort of loosen you up. So, he uses it. I did clock the line about the whale fur. That the ships kept disappearing and they kept losing their whale fur shipments. That's kind of a quasi plot line or a fraction.
Well, there was because this is something that comes up in the beginning of the Sisterhood of Dune book, because they actually lose an uncle, although they've changed the whole structure of that family. So anyway, but basically before Venport became the Spacing Guild, they had a rival, but the rival was less good at the whole traveling through spacing. So sometimes they would lose a shipment and they lost their uncle and a huge investment that set them back for a while. The Harkonnens.
So again, it feels like they're grafting a little bit of a plot line or an idea from the past. Oh, and that reminds me, in that first conversation, the previous conversation with Francesca and Constantine, he says, you came from across from the other side of the galaxy. And what conversation, or was it later with Valia? There's some conversation about her being with the navigators or with there was some fragment that made me think that she was embedded with the guild, what will become the guild.
Well, the guild should already exist at this point, but then if they follow the books at all, because the guild, basically the guild is formed at the end of the Great Schools of Dune trilogy, and it's tied to that character Anna Carino that they've wiped out of this version, apparently. So I don't know. According to the books, the guild exists. According to the show, who knows?
And they haven't mentioned the guild or navigators or anything up until this thing where there was some indication that Francesca was somehow there, the emissary or the...
or did she just travel with them because they are the ones who do the...
I wish I could go back and look, but it's basic.
I have the transcript open. What was said?
It was either guild or navigator. But there was something about her.
Oh, yeah. The Spacing Guild has been known to monitor dispatches.
That's it. When he says, I didn't send a crystal to you. So there's our first reference of the guild. Right.
Yeah. Why didn't you tell me the truth? The Spacing Guild has been known to. So basically, he's saying that I didn't. Yeah. Oh, no, because that's right. Valia was saying about not telling her, being honest about Kasha. I think first of all, she knew she would come faster if it was about her son. But her excuse is that the Spacing Guild might spy and read the thing.
Right. But that's our first guild reference. Spoken in the...
Yeah, it's the same as Mentats. They just mention Mentats exist, and then it's still exactly. They're still out there.
Okay, so what's this little orb? What is this little? Is this AI? Is this thinking machine stuff?
Well, yeah. So I saw people speculating online that it could be some sort of recording device, which would make sense given the context of the scene. Obviously we heard that, like, I didn't send you a crystal, which makes you wonder if, it would be like a recording device with that. But the object from the books that it looks just like is something called a gel sphere. And that's basically like the CPU core of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
So, for example, we've talked a few times about this character, Erasmus, who may or may not exist in this version. And his body was destroyed in the jihad. But his core, his gel sphere, was smuggled out. And so for a lot of the books, he's just like this gel sphere being carried around and connected so they can talk to him. Yeah.
That's what
it looked like, but that can't be. Why would he give him that?
Right.
It must be something with recording or something.
Yeah, and it's literally Deus Ex Machina, right? It's literally a machine that is going to make a big, be an important part of the episode 6 plot wrap up.
Right.
And when Haro looks at it, Edward Davis, who you seem to appreciate, you gotta call out. Here.
I especially know him from, he was in, I love the show Sanditon. If you like Jane Austen stuff, if you like Bridgerton stuff, Gilded Age, all that, Downton Abbey, definitely watch Sanditon. It's complete. There's 3 seasons out. It's based on the unfinished Jane Austen novel.
Wow.
But he shows up in season 3 and, no spoilers, but he makes an important connection with an important character. And I really like him based on that. And then seeing in this episode, he was given more space, he got to have this conversation with Desmond where they let his face do interesting things because he has really interesting, micro facial expressions. So it was nice to see him get to stretch a little more.
Right. A little space cocaine opens up his character for a second. The Bridgerton verse, right? Is there's a whole, that was,
I said Sanditon is not Bridgerton.
Right. That's
Sanditon
true.
is actually based on an unfinished Jane Austen novel. Bridgerton is if you take, Gilded Age, Downton Abbey, these are all based in history. Bridgerton winks at history, especially the Queen Charlotte one's decent on that front. But for the most part, it's just cotton candy.
Okay. Well, it's one of the top downloaded, streamed seasons.
Doesn't require much thinking. I like it. I do. I watch all the Bridgerton episodes, all those seasons, but it does not hold a candle to Sanditon or Gilded Age.
There you go.
No, not even close.
Strong recommendation. Anyway, he actually gets to do some acting in this episode. when Desmond gives it to him, he looks at it. He's not confused, but there's a moment, and then the facial expression on him resolves to like, I know what this is, and I'm happy about it. Right? This is a really powerful. So the practical effect was great. I don't know how they lit that thing up, like if it's just CGI or if they did a practical
but
effect
that just looks so much like a gel sphere, because at one point you have a thing where like Anna is holding the character who's erased, who's the aunt of Haviko in the books. She's like navigating through a dark space because Erasmus is like lighting up his little gel sphere to help her, and then putting it dark when she's hiding, and
Nice.
And it has the glitter in it too. It looks like a gel sphere, but why in
episode 5 would
and why would Desmond give one to Harrow?
Yeah.
And in the fact they mentioned about the crystal for messaging, it must just be like they're making it's just a coincidence that it looks like this thing from the books.
Well, but we know that they know that they're plucking. So that they're plucking details.
Yeah, I feel like they like browse the wiki rather than. Sorry,
that's right. Yeah. All right, let's move on. Valya and Francesca. Basically, Francesca is reporting into Valya, and I don't know. I get this sense that Francesca is very attached to her son, which again is not very sisterhood like. We get a lot of cross attitudes about sisterhood and mission. I mean, with Michaela, with Jen, with Francesca, with even Tula being very attached. I guess maybe later in the OG books, they're very detached from those things, which is a very important aspect of the resolution of the books. But it seems like there's still a lot of attachment here, and the sisters are not very sister-like. In my appreciation of.
Yeah, but the whole attachment, like you can't have attachments and it never works, and the tale is old as time, and clearly, Star Wars is
exactly, yeah.
But Star Wars, Star Wars obviously pulls a lot from Dune also, but Star Wars puts a real emphasis on like, let's show all the ways that this does not work. Let's interrogate this concept.
Right. So this is basically an exposition scene, right? We get the plans with plans. We'll get to that. And then we get a quick scene with Desmond, who wants to go hunting for insurgents, and he invites Kieran to join them. But we get that Kieran, sorry. We get that. My notes are a mess because I was like trying to spell check. I don't have Kieran as the spell check word in my in my Google Doc. He leaves a little key lock thing on there, so it's just like, okay, dude's not very good at espionage, right? Which is what gets found later by Constantine. But my question is, does Desmond know that Kieran is a spy? Is he just playing with him? Was he going to take him out and then sort of use him? Or did he actually invite him along like, hey, you're a security dude, we're security dudes, let's go do some security dude stuff?
I always assume that in this show that Desmond is anti everybody except for the emperor and his wife, because he wants to use them to achieve whatever he wants. So I took it as antagonistic, but that's just, I think, because I assume Desmond is being antagonistic all the time.
They're not telling us that he's that great of an investigator.
No.
We get a reference to a dance lesson, which was very, Game of Thronesy, people.
Because Dancing with the Swords? Well,
the dancing dance instructor. That's what Arya was given. That's I forget the guy's name.
Yeah. But I feel like that's something that people say about swordplay more often. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Constantine sort of throws a little, cheekily throws a salute that is clearly an Atreides callback, right? That's what Duncan Idaho does, where he taps the sword horizontally to his forehead. So, right. And then we get the foreshadowing or the setup or the dramatic tension between Kieran and Constantine, which is like, hey, grow up, kid. And in this episode, he does. And then he thanks him later by having him arrested. So,
yeah.
All right. Kieran jetpacks over to the club, and they get to set some charges. And Michaela provides some sage advice. Don't ever make for spies, so to speak. Don't ever make the mistake that you become the man you are pretending to be. I thought that was a cool line, but it was just kind of thrown away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what.
It just, the character development didn't necessarily earn the line, but it's a cool line.
Yeah. And then this whole idea that Horace is a better man and, he want you to be safe. I was like, Horace was not a better man.
Yeah. I barely knew Horace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I guess they decide, this was the plan this was Michaela's orders to kill Desmond, knowing that Desmond was going to. Oh, that's right. Because Harrow pointed Desmond in that direction. They were going to blow up.
I did point out it's nice for Michaela that both Michaela the rebel and Michaela the sister are aligned on one thing. Desmond's got to go. So for a moment, she doesn't have to be pulled in two directions. She's like, no matter what, get rid of this guy. But also Desmond, he talked about, torturing the guards in the way, and he's just getting really mustache twirly. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But I just have to point out that torture has been proven to lead to false confessions. Like the CIA actually put out a 500-page study on this, basically. So torture is not the way to get a confession.
No.
But if you want to look it up, CIA study 2014.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll talk about package delivery that Mother Superior sent, the intergalactic PS. And we're back. Okay, in this next scene, we see one of the spaceships landing on Wallach 9, and Sister Avila gets a package, which is the blood sample of Desmond that she wants Tula to run. But then we see, as the camera moves, we see a shot of a group of sisters on that sort of platform dais thing over the cliff. With Emmeline, is that the more religious faction, the faithful faction? I think that's kind of what they were signaling. That's what I took away from it.
Yeah, so maybe they're doing some things where they're going to transpose certain elements of the earlier book stories later into the, I hate to call it the Villeneuve verse, but this version.
I think we can I think the movies versus the television. So we have another verse. We have what do we call them in the Marvel world?
Another universe,
yeah,
alternate universe.
We need Loki here holding all this together for us,
right? But I wonder, because there is Dorothea in that universe. She actually did, when they left Rostock because of actually the plague that came up today. So we'll talk about that. But she ended up, she was the truthsayer of the emperor. And so she ended up bringing her faction of fanatics there to Seleucus Secundus. And then Valia ended up setting up shop with another group on Wallach 9. And obviously that's the group that won because of the whole stabby in the throat thing we saw earlier this season.
And again, more track for a season 2 if they go that way with the schism. And of course, Lila, aka Raquela, later references it,
right?
Which actually is our sort of next scene here. We got Jen, Lila, Tula.
And I was just gonna say, I just want Wheel of Time fans to know I'm biting my tongue so hard right now. The book readers, don't worry.
You clocked it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You guys are getting excited. I know the Wheel of Time Sky is all over the place. The trailer
looks. Yeah, Watts Guys is very excited. The teaser that they released so far is just teasing in all the right ways, and all of us there's a shot of of Rand, who's one of the main characters for anyone who doesn't know, standing on a platform with another character. We only see that character's back, and everyone who has read the books is like, cool it in. it's just so on point. It just looks like, and yeah, this is going to be the season where people compare it to Dune a lot.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, but anyway, we've got Jen, Tula, and Lila here. You got a couple of notes in the outline.
Yeah, so I mean, I brought this up earlier, but just basically, I noticed that Raquella also remembers her death, like Dorothea. So this just tells me that this is just different lore. This is not lore from the original books or any other books. This is just something else. I don't know that the final writers who worked on this even realize. I assume not. Or they would explain something, I assume. But okay, fine. So I guess the way it works in the TV show, as best I can gather, until they actually explain it to us, is that I honestly don't know. You have all your ancestors, but then sometimes they can fight amongst themselves to speak to you, or I don't know. They still need to clarify this anyway.
I think in the later Herbert books, there was that thing about the different other memories can fight for control.
Right. Yeah. But just the fact that it's not just like, why is Lila's mother not there, or is she, or why do the memories remember their death when that's after, the next generation was born? And why does she have to ask, why does Raquella, when she takes Lila's body, why does she have to ask questions about things that Lila already knows? Like, and isn't Dorothea in there as well? So I need some clarification from them on how this works in the TV version.
Right. And then we get Jen here. Well, Lila's, is she just being, yes, she is being used
for sister. And she just like stands up and then, okay, sits back down like, okay. Like it's nothing against the actress. Give her more to do.
When I was writing up my notes, occasionally if there's a quote that I want to capture, I'll use like a voice activated dictation, just because I'll remember and speak the quote faster than I can typing it. So when I told the computer the gaping maw of Shai Hulud, it said the gaping maw, the gapping maw of Shai Hollywood. I was like, good job, phonetically.
Close enough.
Yeah. Close enough that I can remember what it was.
Yeah.
And then we get the line, it wasn't a nightmare, it was prescience. And of course, prescience, the ability to see the future, is very important for the latter or OG books. And, prescience is a thing in a lot of the IPs that we cover, and the ability to see down multiple timelines. And that was the whole deal of what the Sisterhood wanted or the Bene Gesserit in the books was a male counterpart who could look forward, because if the sisters could look backward, they're blind to half of the potentiality of the universe. And so they wanted somebody who could look forward. It turns out you needed a male Bene Gesserit to do that. And that's Frank playing with gender norms and stereotypes like that. So, and then we get a line here. I foresaw the reckoning that would drive the Imperium to tyranny. Very important word. When we go south to talk to the faithful, we'll save that these comments, this part of the conversation, for the deep book lore section at the very, very end of the podcast. But then when Lila is in the work in the laboratory here, I don't know if you notice, she knocks Tula's whale tooth keepsake aside. So, and again, I think that maybe Desmond's knife handle is whale. So.
Yeah, I mean, I took that to mean that she had just fully taken over. Lila was not present, because Lila would never do that because it's precious to her. And so they're saying Raquella fully took over her body.
Yeah, that's definitely a signal for that. And we get reference to the Great Work, which, as far as I understand it, that's the genetic index in the breeding program that the Bene Gesserit undertakes.
Yeah. Although the phrase "great work" is giving me Star Wars. That's also a term in the new Skeleton Crew show.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
loving that,
and
by
it's
the way.
tied to the High Republic. Yeah, I'm loving it too. Yeah.
So good. I mean, it's just a perfect December sort of feel good, fun rom. But still rich with lore, right? And still very good story and still very good world.
Well, it's just the world building is so good. Like whatever's going on this planet has layers for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what I want from a kid's story, is a story that I as an adult can appreciate simultaneously, and they match that really, really well. Anyway, we're here to talk about Dune Prophecy. So next up, we have Harrow and Valia, and we get the scene where they're talking to each other. We get some more exposition dumpy stuff, but we definitely get a close up of the fabric of Harrow's clothing, and again, that's visually where. But then other people were showing that he was padding himself there, maybe smoothing down his outfit. Is that where he's hiding that little marble, that little crystal? I saw some speculation about that as well. And then we get this line about service to the Imperium. And I just got to call out Foundation a little bit, which also deals with this thing of secret organizations that work to stabilize and or shorten the way, so to speak, in these galactic stories. And know that Frank was definitely writing in the shadow of Asimov's Foundation trilogy, or trilogy. It was a trilogy. So it caught me. That line kind of caught me, and I was like, oh yeah, there's like secret organizations doing secret stuff. And then Valia gives Harrow the ducal signet ring for House Harkonnen. And of course, very important within the Imperium, these rings, they're used as, what is that? What do you call that when you drip the wax? See, it's just a seal, right?
Like a seal. Yeah. I would love if this story was, had Harrow coming out being someone that people underestimated, but in a way where he's actually not a horrible person. I need some more complexity to everyone's like, oh, the Harkonnens are awful at this point. And that's not really true at this point in the timeline, that people just, I guess, they were disgraced, but still, I just need more complexity from the Harkonnens. So I hope that he is the one to deliver that. Because we saw him underestimated this episode, and I
definitely. And we in our mid-season catch up, so to speak, with the Dune Minute podcast folks, that was one of their predictions. Is like, are we going to see something that turns House Harkonnen from fair to middling to down their path of?
But I just mean, that he would be. I hope that he would be. Add some moral complexity to House Harkonnen, that it's not just turning toward evil.
Because that would be a really great arc to see them sort of struggle with and go through these changes to how do we get to the Baron,
right?
Vladimir.
10,000 years later, like that's an immeasurably long amount of. I mean, you can measure it, it's 10,000 years, but we can't conceive of it really.
So this is the first time we get the word imprinting dropped on us, and this is a very important aspect into the Dune books, especially the OG books and the latter three. There's a lot of imprinting related things, and this is a real world psychological phenomena. And this is where there's a great Wikipedia article on it if you want to read this on psychology. But it's basically where you learn to attach your sense of identity to another, and you learn characteristics and are stimulated by or learning things. So, mother and child imprint. In this case, this is about sexual imprinting, where Haviko is so taken by his emotional response to Francesca that he can't think logically, and it's a form of, in the Dune universe, of manipulation. There's some great past real-world psychological experiments. There's a great one about a guy who imprints Canadian geese, and they fly with him and this kind of stuff. So,
it's a thing with birds, especially, it seems.
Yeah, right. And I kind of look at it as another tool like the voice, where the voice can be used to manipulate somebody in a moment. Mm-hmm. Imprinting can be used to manipulate somebody over a very long period of time.
Yeah.
And it's a type of control that the sisterhood has over key people.
Yeah. And film fans, when you watch the second Dune, pay attention to that scene where Lady Fenring is Leia Sado, where she is seducing Fayed Rautha. What's his name? Elvis.
Oh, yeah.
Austin Butler.
Yeah, that's
Austin
it.
Butler.
That's
it. The scene where she's seducing him, she's basically doing this. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And it gets in the latter Frank Herbert books, it gets a little weird with the imprinting stuff. Mm-hmm. It comes into play, but again, they're grafting these key things. But it explains why Havik was so taken Francesca. So then we go from the talk of imprinting right to Haviko and Francesca. So, they bring us right along. And we get Francesca lobbying for Constantine, which I think is a really interesting conversation, general, in terms of how parents can infantilize their children by sort of making their world smaller and not giving them agency and a space to grow. And she's basically saying, look, give him some responsibility, put him out there a little bit, let him lean into some stuff, and then he will grow. And that is one of the very important tenets that Frank Herbert was writing about in the original books, which is humanity, when faced with the sameness over and over again and stagnation and redundancy, we cease to grow. And if we cease to grow as a species, then we will wither and die ultimately. Mm-hmm. So that we need to be standing on the precipice of the known universe, which is why the Kwisatz Haderach is so dangerous in some regards, is that we have to stand on the edge of the unknown and use all of our faculties, use our ability to reason into logic and to construct new solutions to novel problems. Mm-hmm. That's what, as a trait of our species, that's what keeps us alive as a species and ever forward. So it's a very quick little thing embedded in here, and I don't even know that they were intentionally doing it, but that's, to me.
What I found interesting about this scene in terms of the imprinting is, and it's something that especially stuck out to me when I watched the Inside the Episode. They do these little Inside the Episode shorts that you can find if you're outside. I think in the US they're on HBO. Outside the US you find them on YouTube. But when she does that, she kind of like taps his chest, like as she's getting close, and she's kind of bringing him back into the fold. Yeah. And there's a rainbow arc that kind of goes out from them at that moment.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Very good. Oh, right. Yeah. There's that lens flare thing that happens.
Yeah. Rainbow lens flare. Yeah.
That's good. And that physical tapping, that is definitely something from the latter OG books, where there's a physical component to the imprinting aspect. All right. And the one thing I kind of wish, again, they're just cramming a whole bunch of stuff in here. This would have been a great subplot for a longer episode that had more time to breathe, is how showing us the subtle control that an imprinted person is under, or the subtle sway that they're under.
I just wonder how much was left on the cutting room floor, because for instance, like the whole doe eyes thing with, that Jen was calling Lila doe eyes. It felt like something that should have been better established in scenes that were cut, The way they were it felt like it was a callback to something that we should have already,
Agreed. All right, so now we've got the laboratory and Sister Avila, and here we go. We finally get an answer to what's going on with Desmond's magic space wizard powers. It's a pathogen, it's a virus, it's a genetically modified RNA retrovirus, which isn't a retrovirus already genetically modified? I'm not sure. I tried that up really quick. But anyway, and it's a plague. It's similar to a plague that was infecting the liver of people that produced an enzyme and we get the word omnius. So do you want to give us a quick lore dump on omnius?
Yeah, so there is something called the Omnius Scourge, which was basically something that's... so Omnius was like the head, the mastermind of the AI mind, basically the head of the machines they were fighting in the Butlerian Jihad. And he works actually with the Tleilaxu to send out a plague that ended up, I want to say decimating humanity, but my cousin told me you can only say decimate if you mean 1/10, and I mean 1/3. It killed about 2/3 of the galaxy, and then so this was obviously to diminish the human side, and then later we get what Raquella was specifically involved in was on Rosak. There was a worse version of this where it kind of mutated because Rosak has all this like deadly life there. And that was called the Rosak. Yeah. So it was called the Rosak epidemic. And that was more deadly, and you'd end up being covered in pus-filled lesions. And the first version could be treated with spice. And the second version, because the spice basically would act as an inhibitor, it would block receptor sites so that you didn't uptake, the virus. And they would also, it like they said in this, it infects the liver, like they said in the show. So they would do dialysis. And so the spice and the dialysis, they weren't working on the new Rosak epidemic. And Raquella, basically, she ended up they're these mistborn because this planet has like such toxic life forms. The people who were born there, the women, would either become sorceresses or they would be considered misborn. And a lot of them would actually end up, with various deformities and such at birth or mental issues. And they would just be sent out into the jungle, and some of them survived there for a while, and they ended up helping Raquella to figure out the Rosak poison, and so this led to her becoming the first Mother Superior.
Got it.
Or sorry, Mother Superior. What am I saying? Reverend Mother. Same difference. And this is all, by the way, in the Battle of Corrin book, which is the third book in the Legends trilogy. The trilogy takes place during the Great Machine War. So this is like the end of that. So that's the book version. Again, the show is going to do its own thing. But that's what they're referring to.
And instead of infecting the liver, this is affecting the amygdala.
Well, it does. It did say it infects the liver on the show also, but it's
that's what I mean. And they Raquella says that it was related to this one that she had seen that affects the liver. And the amygdala is an important part of our human brains, and it's involved in a lot of things. It's involved in processing memory, decision-making, and emotional responses. Now, in the show, they make a very simple comparison. Oh, it's the fear center. And yes, anxiety, fear, aggression are all processed in the amygdala, and it's an important part of your flight or fight response, which is a very important part of our mammalian history. But it is involved in a lot more complex things. So there's also, I heard the Dune Minute guys talking about one of their pet theories is that we're going to get the litany against fear invented in this, which I don't know how we're going to do in one episode.
They do keep mentioning fear.
Yeah, they do mention fear a lot. So I think this is, again, seeding a lot of future stuff.
And Marilyn was asking about that too. So they're making even more casual Dune fans think like, oh yeah, right, the litany of fear, isn't that a thing?
Right. And then we get this quick scene with Sister Avila, which is the one sort of comedic moment in this episode where we get her trying to peer through the door, and then Lila, aka Raquella, pops through.
Right.
And Avila's like, what the heck?
I thought you were dead.
Which is it was funny.
The way she's talking to her too is not like to as an acolyte to an older sister. It's like the Reverend Mother to one of her subjects.
What kind of abomination is this? So we get the word abomination thrown at us. All right. Next up, we got the Sardaukar hitting the club. Not too much to say here. I already mentioned I was annoyed by the line that gets thrown out, which is God created Arrakis to train the faithful. And this is a line that gets, I did a quick search in my Kindle, and this gets mentioned a couple of times in the books and in, I think, chapter 33 and 48, according to my Kindle search. And yeah, it's an important line, and it's an important line in the movies as well, where Stilgar speaks it. So I didn't appreciate her dropping that line on Desmond here. Sorry, my sand trout is interfering with my keyboard here. Sorry, they're so pesky, these sand trout. Right. Anything else that you wanted to think? Oh, and then of course we get the bombs going off, right? Oh wait, that's just in a minute. Sorry, that's just in a couple minutes. I was really surprised at first that when Kyrian killed a couple of the guards, that those guards didn't have their shields on. But then if you think about it, if you're doing like a close quarters search like that, having a shield on does affect your ability to hear and see. And so if you're looking for something subtle, or you're looking for clues, or you're trying to search in a room like that, it could get in the way. So that does track. That does make sense. I just have been reading the first book of Dune, Dune book 1, the original, and I got the scene where I just read the other day, the scene where Leto finds the shut-out Mapes, and he begins to discover that the plot is unfolding. And
underrated character, by the way, but okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. I totally. But Leto in the interior monologue does say like, oh, if I turn on my shield, I won't be able to perceive as well. And I got to figure out what's going on in front of me. I got to be able to listen and see, and that the shield would affect that. So that does track. That's totally fine. The thing that I was a little bit surprised about was, though, those canisters of spice, that's a massive fortune. That is like zillions and zillions of solari. And they're just dumping it out randomly.
But I guess the Emperor would rather no one have it than,
I would have scooped that stuff up, man. Yeah. I don't know. And wait.
You would think they would confiscate it, yeah.
A good thing that they all got masks on, because if you're huffing that much spice, I think you'd get pretty high.
You're about to become a space navigator now.
Exactly. Seriously.
Yeah. What I noticed is, we talk about nitpicking when things aren't working for us. And I noticed, I watched this, I don't know, the day it came out here, which is Monday. And then I watched Star Wars today. And while I was watching this, like, especially during the club scene, I was getting distracted by the set decoration and stuff in the background. And I think it was just because I wasn't as into it. And I noticed when I was watching Star Wars today, I focused on the background. I was like, is it qualitatively any better? Like, no, the props are not any better. I'm just more into the story. Nice. So I spent this whole scene kind of staring around the club, picking it apart, because I wasn't really like
invested in the story.
Yeah.
There you go. That totally makes sense. All right, so let's jump over to a very quick scene between Jen and Tula. And Jen, again, we've got this intimate moment of her being concerned for her well-being. And
of Lila.
Yeah, sorry, Lila. My apologies. Yeah, sorry, not Tula. I have Tula Jen here in my notes. I'm rushing these. And we get this question. Oh, no. But then, Tula is there. And we get this point. They make a point of Tula checking Lila's restraints, which to me is the way these writers work. That's clear foreshadowing that she's going to, Dorothea is probably going to show up next episode or something like that and try to get out. And we get this whole question about, Jen questions Tula, like, well, what did you sacrifice? And Tula said, like, a lot more than you could ever realize.
Yeah.
Which then made me think about Andor and Luthen's, speech about sacrifice. And
I burn myself for dawn that I shall. What is it? Yeah.
For a dawn I'll never see.
Never come. Yeah, dawn I'll never see. Yeah.
Which then, if you look at the end of the Rogue One movie, the explosion is a kind of dawn that they watch. So yeah, poetry. Anyway, I'm very excited that's my number one anticipated show. So
I'm very excited for it too. That's probably my number 2 anticipated show after Wheel of Time. Just because.
Nice. Yeah. I think Wheel of Time is probably dwarfs. So
well, it's also I volunteered to take lead on that one, so I better get into it.
That's right. Yeah, you got to be the advocate for it. And yeah, we just recorded our top 10s, you, me, and John, and that's where we review our top 10. Normally, that would have been a subscriber only podcast. Sort of fits within our second breakfast set of shows, but we make that particular show available to everyone every year as a Christmas present. So that'll be out on the 25th. But we talk about our most anticipated shows. Right. We get a quick, and we didn't really talk about the explosion, I guess, and whether Desmond would have survived the explosion.
Well, they're clearly telling us he's not human. Mm-hmm. If he was human, he wouldn't survive.
And there's been some good debate about would a Holtzman field, the shield, the thing that makes the shield, keep you alive in a circumstance like that. And from what I can gather, the concussive wave would, and that force, the inertia would crush you, even though you may not get hit by a piece of shrapnel.
Isn't there something in the original book also about Holtzman's shields? Like one of the reasons they're not used so much on Arrakis is because they can actually make things more explosive.
Yeah, so a couple of things, and they talk about this in the movie, is that they the vibration of the Holtzman thing will drive worms crazy and attract them and attract every worm in the neighborhood. And then the other thing is if a lasgun, a laser beam, hits it and interacts, then it produces a detonation that is indistinguishable from an atomic bomb let off, which is why people don't use that as a thing, because then you'd get accused of using atomic weapons and all the other houses would attack you. So it's this like oopsie moment, like if a beam touches a shield, bad news.
Right. Yeah, because like Duke Leto, he clocks, or someone on his security, like probably Gurney or something, says that the Harkonnens have stolen a shipment of lasguns, and they're like, uh-oh, watch out for the Holtzman shields.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in the books, I just read the dinner scene as well, which we mentioned before. So good. Like I was like, oh yeah, the dinner scene. And I was thinking of you as I was reading it. So good. But there's a shipment of lasguns is involved in that as well.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's when that comes up. Yep.
So Desmond is alive. Their trick didn't work to lure him in to blow everything up. The unkillable Desmond at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of like, it was intriguing, like what's going on with him, and it remains intriguing, but I'm just not as interested in his character, to be honest.
Fair enough. All right. Next scene, mother and son have a little talk. And Constantine questions his real purpose. If you, sisterhood, can, manipulate and control this kind of stuff, why was I, born, and why am I not? Why am I half?
Mommy? Yeah,
what's that?
Why did you leave me, mommy?
There you go. Exactly. So we get the revelation that his real purpose is to protect his sister. And I have a question: is she telling the truth, or is this more manipulation?
Yeah, I mean, we saw obviously that, or we heard about that when they were young, he did volunteer himself up to be co-kidnapped to protect his sister. So I think we should believe some of that's in there, but also like he left her hanging just last episode when they were supposed to go and talk to his dad. And of course they talk about it in this episode. And he's like, the reason I left you hanging at that meeting, accusing our dad himself, is because I went to him before that. And he was so proud of me that I was going to come because he thought it was to support him.
Right.
So we see how desperate he is for his father's approval. And I think that's the biggest factor playing on him in this episode.
Right. I did note the parallels. We've got Francesca and Constantine, but we also have Tula and Desmond as both these pairs of offspring and mother being separated in some way, and the trauma and the pain that
and feeling
cause.
Left. Yeah. I wonder if Constantine and Desmond could bond over that.
Probably. And then, of course, we have Lila, and Tula sort of thinks of Lila as a child in some ways. So
and they also on the lore front, they have a talk in this scene where Constantine says, "I had to learn about." He says to his mother, "I had to learn about the great Carinos, the Roderick, Jules, and the butlers before them." So this tells me that, I keep talking about them cutting out this character, Anna Carino, who would have been the aunt of Haviko. And it seems like they cut out her father, Salvador, as well, who is the emperor. When you start Sisterhood of Dune, that's who's the emperor, Salvador.
Okay.
So I think, they just basically cut out that whole side of the family and all the plots around them. Maybe they want to repeat them in future seasons of the show. Maybe they want to turn Inez into Anna in some way. Yeah.
All right. Next scene, we get Michaela reporting to Valia, and Michaela is complaining a little bit about having to destroy everything she's built, which again, out of character for a sister in some way. And they're setting Michaela up to be a bit rebellious in faction. And if she goes back to Arrakis and she's got a chip on her shoulder, what does that portend for the plot of the sisters in the future?
Yeah.
And then we've got Constantine finding some evidence, and Karen is a bad spy and gets arrested. It's pretty straightforward. I didn't pick up anything specific. And then we go to a dinner party. Yay! And I just mentioned the dinner party in book 1 of Dune. So good. Oh, his writing, Frank's writing was so on point. But we get Constantine with a big promotion, and Inez Natalia's not happy, and there's a bunch of looks that are exchanged between everybody, and get confirmation. Well, it's, Constantine gets his big promotion, but, Inez is like, "Oh, no, sorry, sweetheart. You got to stay in your room under guard."
Right. And her mom just like kind of storms off at one point silently. And Inez is the only one who really seems to notice.
Right. Or clocked it. And then Inez goes to visit Kieran, and somehow she's figured out how to activate truth sense, which
she's been training with Kasha.
So she's making some leaps, and they say that she's talented, right? They say that she's definitely talented. So I don't read it as it would have been nice if we'd seen her practicing it earlier in the season, so that there's a little setup for it, but fair enough. But I would also, Kieran is, he's telling the truth. Her questions aren't very sly. So maybe her truth sense isn't so good, and she has feelings for him. So there's a lot of complex chemical soup here between the two. But I don't know. I'm just not buying their chemistry very much on screen. So, but anyway, we get quite a little love too. We get a very brief scene of Jen and Lila. I didn't have any notes on that. It was just a setup scene. But then we've got a combined set of scenes here where Tula runs the blood sample. Natalia comforts Desmond, and Francesca and Haviko have a little bit of an intimate moment. And this is all sort of woven together visually. We see Desmond clutching that fabric keepsake, and then we reveal that he was his mother is a sister. We get the reveal at the same, more or less the same time.
That his mother, that he's the child of an Atreides and a Harkonnen. Yeah,
right. Which is the computer.
It's got to be Tula.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that.
But why doesn't it just pop up? The computer should be able to say, like, it's your child, Tula. DNA, 50% you.
Exactly. So, people have been theorizing that, and it fits timeline wise and stuff like that. But it just feels tricksy. It just feels like they're being tricksy for the sake of being tricksy.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It didn't even feel like. I guess we've been wondering what his identity was. There was the Vorian and Atreides thing going out there. That would have, in a way, been more exciting to me. But I guess this makes more sense with what they've shown us. But it was sort of when the reveal happened, I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and there's this debatable question about, like, okay, do you keep widening the world out and introducing more storylines? And is that harder than for the for the average viewer, the average consumer? You got to keep the Harkonnens and the Atreides storylines up front so that they can connect the movies, which are the big things. And it just feels like, again, to compare Star Wars, we're just stuck on Tatooine. We're just stuck with the Skywalker's trilogy. And I'm not trying to diminish that storyline, but it's like they keep going to that well over and over again, and it gets a little bit tiresome.
At least it makes sense why they always go back to Arrakis and Dune. It's because of the spice.
Yeah.
It's the one source of the spice. But for me, the biggest problem with this reveal, I guess, was like, now do I suddenly think that this explains all of his behavior, why he wants to destroy the sisterhood? I'm like, I don't know that I'm getting there. And then, and you didn't bring up the hookups at the end.
Oh, right. Yeah. Haviko and Francesca have a little bit of a kissy moment.
And then so does Natalia and Desmond.
Yes. Oh, of course.
It's like that made me ick a little bit. I was like, I don't know. Creepy. This doesn't feel. I mean, I understand she feels jilted by her own husband, and fine on that front. But like, I don't know, just none of the chemistry. Haviko and Francesca. That's the only couple whose chemistry is working for me.
And we get Natalia dropping this line, Shai Hulud makes the final choice. Again, kind of bugs me that they that word, but they're signaling to us that she is she has some zealotry tendencies
in the Fremen direction. Yeah.
And
it's weird that we haven't seen her like talk or anything about the spice, but like she seems really into Fremen culture, except we never see anything with her in the spice.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. So, and she's obviously taken with Desmond because he's chosen, he survived, something, right. The hand of God here is protecting you. And so that is very alluring to her. So yeah, again, this is all stuff. How are you wrapping up this in?
That's why it's like, I feel like I can't properly comment until I see
episode 6.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, well, that's the episode. Any other scene-by-scene notes? Otherwise, we can take a quick break and then get into some feedback.
Well, I want to hear what people think.
Sounds good. And we're back. So let's get into a little feedback. Thank you again, Nancy, for your expert job. I love the way that Nancy brings everything in categorically, right? And creates these little structures for us. So it's so helpful. And I think Nancy's having a good time. I talked to her the other day. She's just having a blast. So we really appreciate it. Dune at thelorehounds.com for everything Dune related. And going forward, hopefully we'll have some more, even if they go to a season 2, we're certainly going to get a third movie. And the books are always there for us, no matter what. So, in Blood Truth, the deep spoilery stuff is at the very end of this. We'll cover that, the post-credits sequence. And our first category is, oh my, not happy. Do you want to start off with Tina's comments?
So Tina says, this show is tough. The writing just doesn't make sense anymore, and I'm not talking about canon or lore. I haven't read any of the XD books, so I have no idea how far the writers stray from that. But the character development and motivations, use of the established Frank Herbert book lore, and depiction of a grand universe are all lacking and confusing to me. Yeah, see, that's been my point the whole time. Sometimes, I compare to the book lore just to illustrate, like, they were handed this story that made sense, and then they decided to do something that doesn't make sense instead. Anyway, Tina says it's also too much origin story for me in just 3 to 40 years for a timeline that spans thousands of years. We get origins of the voice, truth sense, the abomination, probably the Sardaukar. They throw in some face dancer and possibly Gola lore. Add a reckoning that will probably turn the sisterhood into the Bene Gesserit and bring forth their famous fear litany. This show is so over-ambitious that with only one episode left, I still don't know exactly what story they are trying to tell. A short 6-episode season didn't have the effect of tight writing and focused storytelling. I'm not sure they would have done better with 10 episodes or if it would only be a bigger mess. Maybe David and Elysia can talk me into liking the show, but for me, this show gets worse every episode. And I'm sorry, but I agree with you, Tina.
Yeah, I'm not talking you out of anything on this one. I mean, we're happy because it's lore and it's on a, it's Dune lore on a screen.
And it's pretty. So sure is pretty.
Sure is pretty. So
love that cast.
Yeah. But yeah, it does. And I think you, Elysia, made a similar comment, which is it didn't matter what the episode length was. The quality, the base quality here is but lacking. Aaron K., one of our affiliate podcast holders as well, Radioactive Ramblings, go check them out. They're covering, they did some Arcane coverage. They've got Red Risers Rambling. They did a great job on Fallout this year. Ghibli, they're also covering some stuff. So Aaron says, in this kind of prequel story where we already know the fate of the universe, the showrunners need to make us care about the fate of the characters they missed on that front. Oh, that's a very observation. Most of the characters I find really interesting are underdeveloped. Too much screen time for Havoko and Desmond and not enough for Inez. I also couldn't name a single personality trait of Sister Avila other than raining on Tula's parade 24/7.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. Yeah, and I mentioned this, I think, like on the last pod, that Avila just seems to be a foil for whatever they want in Tula. They need to sharpen Tula's responses or reactions. They just throw Avila out there. I'm not really sure what his true motivations are. Do you want to get Jean Jr.? Yeah, who's also another one of our co-host persons, and you on Comics Versus with you?
Yes, so watch out for our Joker Folie à Deux and our Joker versus Madcap episode to come out soon.
Very cool.
But Jean says, the big reveal felt weak in my viewing. It was like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. I felt no emotional heft to it. Jen seems like such a wild card. To me, Tula turning to her had me thinking, nah, that wouldn't happen, even as Jen scrambles to help Lila. Yeah, I mean, I guess the explanation they gave there is she was the one who didn't have the dreams. She can't be influenced. I guess she didn't catch the virus. But anyway, yeah. Jean says, I also wasn't moved by the palace shenanigans. As soon as I saw Sister Francesca, I knew where it was headed.
Yeah, this feels like the episode, everybody's been hanging in, and then this is the episode that it just feels like I
think we expected it. It's the penultimate episode, you know?
Yeah, but this is the one where like people were 50-50 on the show, and now the pendulum has swung to people are like crossing their arms a little bit, gnashing their teeth slightly.
Yeah. We'll see how they land, but
I love Nancy's categories here. WTF, where did these Sardaukar come from? Aaron K. says, about the Sardaukar reveal, Havoko says at the ceremony that it's the same day as the attack on the Landsrad. Yeah. Oh, good catch. You mentioned that too, Elysia. How does that timeline for creating an entire elite force work? Good question. You want to pick up Brian?
The unveiling of the Sardaukar was disappointing. They just appear. They don't act like elite troops. And because we don't know their background in elite training, it's like meh and a lost lore opportunity. You know what I had with the problem I had and it's the same problem that I had when they showed the Landsrad room. You know, I'm like, this is too small, but it's a budget thing. Yeah. And I guess you could say in this case, that the forces will grow. But yeah, there was like 30 people in that force. What are they going to do?
And Jean also chimes in, the elite fighting force, where have they been hiding? Who was training them? Are they mercenaries? Did Desmond have them off-world somewhere? If he did, then it would seem to me that they, and him by extension, would be a bigger worry than some band of insurgents. They felt very unsullied to me, and I wasn't feeling it.
Well, I do have to say the Sardaukar, what they grow into, are very Unsullied coded. Well, or probably vice versa, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah. Could Desmond be Superman? Do you want to get Chumbaruni?
Chumbaruni. So I love saying your name, Chumbaruni. Desmond didn't have enough injuries to survive a blast, even with a shield like that. But you can see his face got fucked up in that last scene with the Emperor's wife. I thought Desmond using the shield and surviving that explosion was a little cheap. How do people actually die in this universe if shields are that crazy? And I think it's not the shield. I think it's something about like, him being a machine or something.
Mm-hmm.
But still, a machine should blow up too. So
that was a pretty significant explosion. He was surrounded by it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He should have been squished into jelly even just from the concussive forces. And Sub-Zero. Oh, and I have to laugh because the Sub-Zero's Discord icon looks very much like the masks that the proto-Sardaukar are wearing as well. It was like an elite troop of Sub-Zero. Right.
But you pointed out that it looked like the Decepticons from Transformers.
Oh, right. No, but that was
something. Okay.
Yeah. When Constantine is sitting on the steps in the training room, he looks up and then there's like this. I don't know why they showed that to us because we haven't seen it before, but there's some sort of symbol up there, like a house sigil type of thing. And it looked very much sort of Decepticon Autobot inspired. Anyway, the whole bar scene annoyed me. There's no way that Hart survives an explosion of that scale. The concussive force that would have turned inside into pulp. And then Kieran and Michaela decide to stop outside the scene for a scene of the crime to have a little heart-to-heart. I don't know how they can tie up all the loose ends in a single episode unless it's a 2-hour finale. Yeah, we didn't really talk about Kieran and Michaela breaking up. He basically says, you tricked us, so bye-bye. Don't let me see.
Yeah, and John also says he wants a better explanation for the personal force field for Desmond, but I know I probably won't get it. He says, and Abby also wants to know, how does Desmond survive that blast unscathed? Not even a cough. The Holtzman shield protects against smoke, but again, I just don't know that he's human, even though he has DNA. I don't know.
Yeah, and no, Abby, they don't protect against smoke, and that's why the Baron in the first movie with the poison gas is affected by the gas. He just didn't get enough. The shield kept enough of the gas away from him for just long enough for him to survive.
And he reacted quickly.
Exactly. I do have to say, Villeneuve shot that scene beautifully with the Baron up in the sea. Yeah, it was really great.
Even though in the book the suspensors don't work quite like that. That's more of like a first Dune movie reference. But I thought that was really cool to show him. Yeah.
I think
like
Villeneuve
a bug hiding in the corner of the ceiling. Yeah.
So good. I think Villeneuve has done some nice interpretations of the technology and stuff.
Yeah.
Next category, with just one comment, exactly how evil is Valya? Maureen D says that we think Tula's biggest crime in the eyes of our sister may be giving birth versus slaughtering all those people. It tells you everything we need to know about Valya.
True.
That's hilarious, Maureen. That's pretty true.
And the small rooms where it happens. Brian 8060. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Brian 8063, Library Master, and he released a new blog post recently, right?
Yeah. Definitely go check out. Yeah, we do have a blog. So if you like to write and or if you like to read, check out our blog. Go to lorehounds.com and there's a link for the blog. And we have an open submission policy. And Brian is our editor-in-chief. And so there's a blog post on there that explains how to submit things. So if you're like, oh, wow, this makes me think about this, or I want to write about this experience that's related to that, definitely send it in. We're very open and happy to publish people's stuff. Anyway, let's listen to Brian's voicemail.
Hello, Elysia and David. I wanted to leave a voicemail message here. I'll be brief as possible because time is precious. This stems from our Discord Dune channels, and I will call this segment In Defense of the Small. I'll start with a little criticism first. This episode pulled me out of the story. I do not feel the high stakes here. More tension should be happening. The rise of the Sardaukar took me out of the narrative. There needs to be more context and lore exploration here. Okay, defense of the small. We're seeing a lot of meetings here. Decisions made in rooms. I think this is natural. If you imagine all the places impactful decisions are made, it is in the small moments. As a historian who studies the presidency, I think about the Oval Office, the White House residence, deputy-level meetings. Imagine the Tsar Palace, Mao's office or apartment, Xi's office today in China, 10 Downing Street, a parlor among suffragettes, and the list goes on and on and on. The millions of meetings, discussions, and moments that make history. We see this in this episode and the previous one with the Emperor, with Hart and the Emperor and his family. I can appreciate that. But what I think we're losing is the broader tensions and stakes and the exploration of the lore. We've seen television programs that have small meetings and discussions and dialogue that you still get the impact and tension. However, with that said, it's still a fascinating world, and the acting is excellent. Anyway, we will see what happens in the final episode. Thanks for all your coverage, and I will see you both on the other side. Brian 8063.
I might have missed the discussion that this is a defense against, but yeah, absolutely. When I made the comment earlier about things like the Sardaukar and the Landsraad meeting being too small, that's because those are supposed to be like the Landsraad. They did say it's the High Council, so it'd be smaller, but it would be like if we saw the Star Wars Senate, but suddenly it was just, a side meeting, and they're like, this is the Senate meeting. You're like, what? Where's the whole chamber with all the senators, So that's when I said that it looked too small. It was only for things that are supposed to be on a large scale. But yeah, obviously the room where it happens. Indeed. That's a famous song from the Hamilton play, for anyone who doesn't know. It is like the people in charge having quiet meetings that decide these things.
And interestingly enough, Nancy and Brian had a little aside about that Nancy used to work at a level of government where she was present to a lot of those meetings, and how impactful those small meetings really are. And of course, Brian as a historian, as a professional historian, academic, quasi-academic, I guess, studied these moments. So yeah, I take the point, and I think it is interesting. They do capture these moments, but yeah, we're losing attention.
Yeah, but they're just not like these could be the most compelling scenes,
Totally.
Like I was telling Luke about, there's two characters, Bernard and Sims, in Silo, and I was saying, it's gotten to the point we're a couple episodes ahead of what has aired, but it's gotten to the point where when I watch their scenes, I hide under a blanket, like watching through, like oh my god, this is so tense.
I got to catch up. Seems like the season's going pretty well. So
yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
That's great. All right, we've got some people ready to collect their internet points. We like to award bowls of cereal around here with the Lorehounds. Do you want to read Rocky's Zim?
Yeah, it says, the piece of black cloth from the first episode, the one Desmond had and still has, is a piece of Tula's dress somehow. Not currently, but somehow from before, or Desmond thinks it may be from her. He has been wanting revenge. He also may be protecting, at least watching Kieran, because he is an Atreides. I was wondering if they were somehow working together. They aren't, but Desmond has kept an eye on Kieran.
Yeah, that's a good call. That's definitely a good call. I hadn't thought about the fact that Kieran is his descendant, or related cousin kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's see. His grandfather, right? He said his grandfather was his father was Albert. So, and we don't know how Albert was related to Ori in the show.
No, we don't.
Albert's a made-up character. He's not in the books. Yeah.
Right. All right, Abby, who is also one of our other co-hosts and works with you on the Silo book series.
On the book club, yeah.
Yeah, she says, theory, there will be a showdown between Kieran and Constantine in the next episode. They'll kill each other. Valia might have one with Tula if she finds out about the love child. On the abomination front, my prediction is that Dorothea will pop out to slash Valia's throat at the end. Bum, bum, bum. The sisterhood will continue under the leadership of Jen. Everyone else dies. Rest in peace. Okay, Abby's putting down some big markers here for big internet points. You're going to win big if that, especially if Valia gets taken out.
I could see that happening with Dorothea coming out to slash Valia's throat. Yeah.
I just don't see how Jen ascends.
How Jen, of all people. Yeah. I mean, I would get Lila out of anything, but. Yeah.
It would be a big turn for Jen. Like I could see them they're building a lot of tension for Jen, and that's got to release at some point.
There's got to be some reason why they're putting so much focus on her.
And Zatoichi, I wonder if we'll find out in the last episode that the Sisterhood was responsible for the kidnapping of the royal children.
Yes.
I like that. I like that a lot. That would be very much in line.
Sense.
Yeah. All right. The next category.
And then we saved you from the horrible people who took you, who is also us.
All part of the manipulation, right? Yeah. Building Inez's internal mythology about herself and about her place in the family and stuff. Yeah, I that. All right, the next category. And the Emmy goes to ...
The acting remains very impressive, Aaron Kay says, from everyone involved, and I think the actors are making the best of the story they've been giving. Agree.
Tina says the actor who plays Lila does Chloe Leia, I guess is her name. Yeah. Does a great job switching between her scared self, a horrifying Dorothea, and a confident and determined Raquella. Indeed. Bravo to Chloe Leia. Rocky Zim, I'm enjoying the Travis Fimmel performance. I know people are hating on him, but he's doing what he does best and paid a ton of money for it. Crazy space wizard.
Good for him. And so then we have random thoughts about characters and stuff. Groggy1 says, I don't understand why Desmond needed Harrow to tell him to go look in the underworld. Seems pretty obvious. Yeah, I agree. Loved all the shots of the palace and ships, though. The set design continues to blow my mind. Yes.
100%. And of course, Marilyn, our favorite Tolkien scholar and another one of our great co-hosts. I'm wondering if Desmond knows of his Atreides Harkonnen ancestry. They did say that he knows that his mother was a sister, but I'm not sure that they specified that he knew which families he came from. That's a good point. They have not told us that, just that one piece. Well, the big reveal caught me by surprise. I didn't see that Desmond was Tula's son. I think we thought Tula's son might be Kieran at one point, and now I find myself wondering if Desmond and Kieran are half-brothers.
Kieran's too young.
I find it highly unlikely that the Empress would go for Desmond in a sexual way. I do see her being attracted to power, but come on. He is such a commoner. I really don't see how lowering herself to that level. I think it's mostly HBO effect. I would counter that it's more on the religious zealotry angle. She says to him, oh, you've been chosen. And Habiko says, I think in episode 1, he says, oh, religion is the refuge of my wife or something to that effect. You know, that she's more into that stuff than he is.
Yeah, and also, you know, it's not like she's marrying him, so it's not lowering herself. It's just, you know, she wants a romp, I guess, to make herself also feel better about the fact that her husband's ex-lover is back, and clearly he's gaga for her again.
Good point. Very good point. Continuing, now we know why Tula kept Jen around. It seems that Tula thought that Jen could be a way of reaching Lila since they were such close friends. Doe Eyes does seem to be an odd nickname between friends, though. I really like that Raquella came alive through Lila, which of course implies so can Dorothea. Like everybody's like, we're clocking most of the plot stuff up. Will Lila wind up being taken over by Dorothea so that she can kill Tula or Valia? Stay tuned. It seems as though the sisterhood is Inez's only refuge now, though she is still hoping to rely on her swordmaster, it seems. I absolutely adore the sound choreography used when Haviko announces his appointment of Desmond as Bashar. At the end of each of his statements, you hear the resounding thud as sections of the troop of the proto-Sardaukar turn from one direction to another, always keeping their faces towards the Emperor. Brilliant. Yeah. Good blocking. Yeah, good. Yeah, and definitely some good sound effect. Use of the thumper and some other scene. You want to get
Abby says, yes, some quick thoughts. Desmond got a new outfit, and he's been very busy in between episodes recruiting and training Sardaukar, or else they just popped out of the ground like Gimli would say. His powers, quote unquote, are still a mystery, even with finding the Omnius virus. How exactly does he infect individual persons, or are they all infected and he just triggers it somehow? Yeah, because...
That's my thought.
When I was describing the virus before, the Omnius Scourge and the later Rossack epidemic, we're talking about something that looks more plague-like, where people kind of waste away and they have neurological symptoms and stuff too. But it's not this burning thing, although we'll talk about something else that it's brought up by someone else later. Yeah, but how could that possibly, what are the mechanics of it that he can target only certain people in a room and make it happen in a certain time? So, yeah.
Even though we got big reveals, we still have a bunch of questions yet to resolve about how all this works. Agreed.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're going to get it resolved, but I have hopes. Bring it home. One more episode. Bring it home. Abby says fear is a mind killer and also flammable. But yeah, which is funny. But I have a question. Like, was that kid scared when he died? No. The kid Pruitt in the first was that the first episode? Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Fear the Mind Killer. Yeah.
Inez was also very busy in between episodes. She didn't even need to go to Wallach 9, as she seems to be a full truth-sayer sister. I wish the Atreides, which also maybe we should be questioning about, she thinks she's doing the truth-saying, but is she really fully trained? Did she do it well? Or is she not?
It was kind of like the unreliable narrator thing. Like, oh, this is an unreliable truth-sayer thing. Like, she's clouded by her feelings for Kieran. Her true sense isn't really that great. And it's not just about being able to detect truths, but actually asking the right questions in a way to elicit response that you don't already have a bias to hear the answer for. There's a really great part of the first Dune book where Lady Jessica and Hawat have this conversation. And without getting into the conversation, part of what Herbert does is he talks about you can detect patterns of thought based on people's beliefs at a sort of a meta context level. And that's part of what the Bene Gesserit work on is this observing another person at a remove so you can see the bigger patterns that they're being influenced by. And so part of your truth sense is the ability to ask questions to reveal those patterns. And if you can't see your own patterns, then you're locked into a dynamic with the other person that you can also be adversely influenced by their answers. So that's a bunch of speculation and extending on my part, but I think it would track some of this. So carry on.
Abby says, I wish the Atreides fellow could decide on a consistent accent. I know he is good guy coded, but I'm finding him annoying. I did look up I was curious about his accent. He's from Liverpool, by the way, if anyone else was wondering. Natalia is a zealot and a petty, power-hungry, jealous woman who is, of course, because it's HBO, attracted to Desmond. She perceives that he is the one with power, not Haviko. Yeah, I could think maybe of a point there. End of this rush story that wanted too much and achieved too little. Oh, there's another episode, LOL. Cinematography, set design, and costumes are great. As David usually says on the podcast, if you take the episode apart into little pieces, it looks great, sounds great, and there is lore. But does the lore make sense? This is my problem.
Yes.
Even ignoring the fact that it breaks, book lore, does it make sense internally? And so far, I'm not convinced yet.
Right. Yeah. Our listeners are getting a little salty in their feedback. Which, totally here for it. We're not finished with the episode 4 yet category with Marilyn. I know it's way late for my response to the pod for Dune 4, but such is life. Couple of points. Mudras, as you say, are physical gestures using anything from fingers to the entire body. They're used in various religious practices. They're most common in Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, which I think is really interesting. I didn't pick up on that, but they're called mudras, right? So a physical...
The finger thing that they do when they do the truth sense, yeah.
And then in the latter OG books, there's definitely some physical stuff that goes on in terms of stimulating different parts of the body and activate different neurons or pathways or things like that all have to do with sensation and touch. I think that Sister Avila is completely committed to the sisterhood. It's just that her ideas on what's best to do vary from Tula's. I had an aha moment. Avila is also the name of the town in which Saint Teresa of Avila lived. She was instrumental in writing a major description of the mystical experience known as the interior castle.
Which I think is the memory thing, or Marilyn, correct me, but where you kind of you remember things by visualizing.
Oh, right. Building a house in your head and putting, I'm going to put this memory in
Let me know
this
if you
room.
mean something else, but that's what I take it as. Yeah.
Nice. She did not bother to hide the fact that she was a cranky old woman with lots of aches and pains. I wonder if any association tended. I think the spice is a stand-in for any valuable resource, oil, gold, rare metals. Yes, absolutely. Frank Herbert was very explicitly writing about oil and OPEC and the CHOAM. And he was trying to think of not oil in a one-for-one, but oil as a key resource by which the rest of society bases its orders and organizes itself around. And if you then start to mess with that, because he's writing it as oil is becoming a dominant force in economy. And so in some ways he's a little prescient because the OPEC messing with oil prices doesn't happen until the 70s, and he's writing in the early 60s.
In the 60s, yeah.
But he's thinking very much about this kind of stuff and taking these ideas and understanding from his understanding of humanity, and then taking this and then moving it out forward, which is really that's one of the things I love about the OG books, is his ability to take these real world concepts and phenomena and then think about them 10,000 later. Well, anyway, the one in power is the one who controls the resource. As they've said already, invariably harm will come for anyone who gathers or uses any of such substance. And of course, Paul says in the movies and in the books, he who can destroy a thing controls a thing. Continuing, I find it interesting.
And apply that, what you just said, to the pouring out the spice barrels.
Yes, right. Yeah, good point. I find it interesting that Valya is criticized for using her nephew to make her way back into the center of power. What other tools does she have? Whatever her motivation, is she, if she is to serve the sisterhood? Yeah, good question. And I think they're just playing with that whole thing of are Valya and Tula Harkonnens, or are they sisters? Like where does allegiance lie and the tension therein? And I think that's a good tension with the Valya character. I think that's interesting. I will note, Riley, that there is no coincidence in the close connection between the words hysteria and hysterectomy, as Elysia referred to. Very good. At any time.
Because they said the hysteria was like a migrating uterus. And hysterectomy is when you remove a uterus.
Yeah, it's just moving around, doing its own thing.
Exactly. The women be crazy because their uterus is all over the place. Literally.
But every time we do an operation, it's in the same place. So
right.
Boy, we are with some weird thought. The dark age of humanity. Anytime the phrase cone of silence comes up, it always think of Maxwell Smart. Yes. Funny. Great television show from back in the day. And I was recently struck by the strangeness of assuming that anytime you visited your ancestors spiritually, they were all going to be ferocious. That certainly is not the case for many other cultures in which people seek out their ancestors for guidance, wisdom, protection, love, and respect. Definitely in the Black Panther series, like that we see that they're all the ancestors are benevolent. But here, other memories are craving the spotlight of consciousness and will do a lot of things to get that. And some are benevolent, some are not. It just sort of depends.
Yeah, I mean, I think, that makes sense in general. Not if I look back through my own ancestry, I know that they're not all going to be nice people.
Right. You want to wrap up with this section?
Davy Max says, I don't think Valya asked Theodosia to face dance and become her brother Griffin. She seemed just as surprised to see her brother as any of us. I think Theodosia saw the previous scene with Valya's uncle Evgeny play out, and she transformed into Griffin of her own volition. Valya's real target for the face dancing is yet to be revealed. I definitely agree. Her real target for the face dancing is yet to be revealed. This would be very interesting for the characterization of Theodosia if she did this voluntarily after saying it was her condition not to. So I hope they clarify it on that front, because that would change things.
It would, yeah. And of course, I mean, they've just so backloaded the episode 6 because we have to get this face dancer.
Right.
Got to get this little gel.
They've got to have some like answer that like answers everything at the same time.
Yeah. And from what I remember of the trailer, there are definite scenes from episode 6 that we've not yet seen play out in the first 5 episodes.
So unless they just cut those scenes.
Yeah, no, they've been pretty faithful. Like everything that I saw in the trailer, I have seen so far. And so I'm expecting these scenes to come up. Some more fighting and action sort of stuff. So I think this is going to be a all no breaks. As they said in Better Off Dead, when you're skiing down a hill, go that way really fast. And if something gets in your way, turn. All right. We just did a John Cusack little film festival for our 11 subscriber podcast. All right. So the last thing, we've got 2 more feedbacks that are going to go into the spoiler section. We've got 1 final episode of the show. And like we said, we'll do a sort of a hot takes on Christmas Eve on the 24th. We'll try to get that out. I'll be traveling. And so will Elysia, but we'll do our best. We'll have our recording equipment with us, but we'll get that out as soon as we can. And then after that, about a week after that, we'll come back together. We'll do a bit of a recap. We'll collect all of your feedback. So make sure to send in your voicemails. Make sure to send in your emails to dune@thelorehounds.com. Always join the conversation on our Discord. Links for all of that stuff are in the show notes. There's a link tree. So go into that. And get those links. And I'm sure people are going to have thoughts. I know y'all are going to have thoughts. So
and I'm sorry if you love it and we were too hard on it. I want people to love it. I want to love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We really do. Like, we were so excited about this show, and it was like, oh, super pumped up. Anyway, do you want to read us out and give a shout out to our Discord server boosters and lore masters? I got some nice music for you here. Here we go.
Okay. All right. Discord server boosters. Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Dork the Ninjas, Doof71, Athena Angelea, Tina the Stew, Nancy M, Ghost of Partition, and Radioactive Richard. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our Lorehound subscribers. And thank you most of all to our lore masters. They're the ones who make this possible. It's The Martian, Michael G, Michelle E, Brian P, SC, Peter OH, Bettina W, Adam S, Nancy M, Tube71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Garrett C, Eric F, Matthew M, Sarah M, DJ Miwa, Andra V, Kwang Yu, Jedi Bob, Nathan T, Alex V, Aaron T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Dally V, Mothership 61, Narls, Kathy W, Listu, Jeffrey B, Elisa U, Neil F, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, and always last, Adrian.
I might keep this song. I like this one.
Groovy.
Yeah. Right on. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will be right back with the deep dive book spoiler section. And if you don't stick around for that, we'll catch you up on episode 6.
The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by The Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.
Okay, here we are in the deep south with the faithful. What do you got? Thoughts?
Well, should we go through the last 2 pieces of feedback?
It would be helpful to do that. Would go back to feedback document. You want to start us off?
Sure. So Brian 8063 says the virus is interesting. It traces back to the robot Erasmus during the Machine Wars, but there is not much opportunity to explore it. Yeah, 1 episode. I think David said it well when he said that maybe the showrunners read the lore but do not fully understand it to incorporate it in interesting or meaningful ways. Yeah. I mean, you guys are even kinder about that than I am. But yeah, you know how many episodes we've brought up Erasmus? Why has it? I mean, I guess there's no Anna Carino, there's no Erasmus. Fine. Maybe we're going to find out next week. He did give the memory core of Erasmus to Harrow, but why?
But why? And why?
I don't know. Explain that. That was so baffling when he and Harrow looked at it as if he knows what it is and was like covetous of it. So
yeah, he totally was.
It feels like if Harrow knows what it is, the audience should too. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a big chunk of lore. Yeah, because they've done no setup for what that is. There's no foreshadowing. It's just like, hey, here's a new, and it glows blue. And we've seen the only thing that they've set up is blue light is related to AI technology.
Right.
So, which makes me think about the blue eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only thing they're coding the blue light as AI stuff. So are the blue eyes omnious?
Well, you know what makes me wonder about that is that there is a point. I've seen an image of the blue eyes where it almost looks like there is a mechanical structure around it in the sky, like a faint suggestion of that. So maybe. Yeah.
In my notes, what did I have here? Where are my notes here? Yes. So they drop the whole question of the blue eyes, like who is this looking back at us? And we get this thing where I foresaw the reckoning that would drive the Imperium to tyranny. And for book readers, that totally codes as the God Emperor and the Golden Path, but the God Emperor pulls humanity back from tyranny. I mean, he uses tyranny, but pulls us back from the brink through tyranny, right? Because he's trying to retrain, he's trying to undo and retrain humanity from a bunch of bad habits, essentially, and put us back out on this edge of frontier thinking. And so that's confusing to me as well. But then she says, if he succeeds, who's he? Is that Paul? Is that the God Emperor? Is that Omnius? Like, who is he? I really don't understand what they're doing with all of this. And I don't wonder if the blue eyes, and like you said, if you saw mechanical stuff around the eyes, that's interesting.
Yeah. Shall I read David Max S2? David Max S says, I just found an excerpt in Mentats of Dune that might explain the technology Desmond is using to boil enemies. Still don't know how he could have reached Kasha unless it was part of the genetically modified virus they mentioned. And so I wasn't sure exactly what he was referring to, so I went and did a search. And I think what he's referring to is something that they talk about, scrambler pulses that have the ability to boil human brains, which is something that the former sorceresses could do to the Cymex, which are sort of like the cyborgs of... So it's got to be related somehow, that there's something about bringing together that virus that Erasmus helped release with this ability to boil. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see next episode. But anyway,
I totally would buy that theory in as much as we know that they're plucking, right? They're plucking these little details. So I wouldn't put it past them to do that. So it's a good catch.
We'll see if they tie together satisfactorily. David Max says, still don't know how he could have reached Kasha unless it was part of the genetically modified virus they mentioned. That's what I'm wondering. Like, how do those two things tie together? I still want to believe it's a Tleilaxu plot with, and the Tleilaxu were involved in that whole scourge thing. So with various signs pointing to them, genetic virus, Desmond being left with quote unquote scavengers on Balut, the eyes, hatred of thinking machines, religious fanaticism, distrust / hatred of Bene Gesserit, of the sisters, how his memory ends at his death. It's hard to believe they can reveal all of this in 1 more hour plus episode, but I feel like they have to find a way to introduce the predecessors to the Bene Tleilax. And at this point, I don't know how they plan to bring it together, but it does seem like they have all these different corners of the lore in play. So are they going to tie together satisfyingly, and how?
Yeah. Let's see. David, is this me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I copied over from the other doc.
Right. Giving confusing signals. I see now. Yeah. I really don't like how they're teasing the fans, how they're teasing us with lore drops, little lore nuggets, and then not using them. I don't know. If they set this up, if these set up the blue eyes as not Paul, as not the God Emperor, as not Leto the second, and it's something else, then it's gonna be this giant misdirect. It's really, I'm afraid that I'm not going to enjoy how to do that. I don't want to presuppose myself, but that doesn't feel good. Like they're playing mystery box tricksy games. Play mystery box to entertain us and set us up, but don't do these intentional misdirections or mix-ups just because you want to mix up the lore. I don't know, for tricksy. Yeah. Anyway, any other thoughts? Any other thing about lore that we'll talk about?
No, I mean, I think, I'm just kind of biding my time to see how the finale, what it connects and what it, I don't want to harp too much on things until I see what actually they have planned for the entire season.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Well, I guess we will be talking on episode 6 next week. So travel safe.
You too.
Thanks.
Hope everyone's well.
Fingers crossed. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.